Hi, I'm Connor, and this box of chemicals cost me nearly $500. Why? So, if you know a bit about perfumery, you might know that these vials, like the ones behind me, are fragrance raw materials. What is that? It's basically just the stuff you use to make fragrances. It's the stuff that makes the smells. And I paid nearly $500 for these. Right, so you might be wondering why this was so expensive. I got these from a kind of niche retailer of fragrance materials called Harrison Joseph. They're based in the UK, so I had to pay shipping and I had to pay in the Great British Pound. Harrison Joseph is a retailer that stocks weird and wonderful fragrance materials that you don't really find anywhere else. You might be going, why on earth did you spend $500 on fragrance from raw materials? Well, I'm trying to make a fragrance, specifically a matcha fragrance. Now, I want to do a little story time. Back in 2023, I had come up with this idea and I thought it was pretty novel. I had a fragrance from Maison Margiela called Matcha Meditation. It's now discontinued. And I wasn't really impressed with the matcha-ness of that fragrance. Because to me, that fragrance is really white chocolate forward. And, you know, it's more of like a white floral gourmand kind of thing. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to make a matcha fragrance. And not only is it going to be a matcha fragrance, it's going to be like a car air freshener. But that name just doesn't do it justice. It's going to be a car fragrance. But not just limited to cars. You know, you could hang it in your wardrobe or your bedroom. You could do anything with it. First impressions opening this box. Immediately, I smelt matcha, like green tea kind of vibes. But it's a lot more green. Yeah. And it's kind of like a menthol kind of thing. It's like a cool, green, slightly spicy kind of smell. I don't know exactly what it's from. It could be this one. Spoiler alert. Matcha Aldehyde. So without further ado, let me just unbox these and talk about what they smell like. What they smell like to me and what they're supposed to smell like compared to the fragrance literature. No. According to the fragrance literature. So this is what the box looks like. I've got some matcha materials and as well as some kind of gourmand materials that I'm just kind of interested in. I mean, it's not just limited to gourmand materials, you know. I've got some stuff, some classic perfume materials, like I've got Oakmoss on me here, you know, that I've never smelled on its own. And, you know, you always hear people talk about, oh, this fragrance smells like Oakmoss. I don't know what Oakmoss smells like. So, you know, oh, Ambrettolide, yeah. It's well packaged. Everything's well sealed. I think these are probably dangerous. That's why they've got them in these plastic, what do you call it, tape? Yeah. All right. I'm going to be honest. I couldn't find my amber bottles for the life of me. I just couldn't find them. I swear I ordered some online, but for now I've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 amber bottles. So I'm not going to be able to dilute my raw materials, and I'm not about to wait however long it takes to ship amber thingos. I'm getting this done now. I'm going to be testing these neat, and I'm only going to dilute the materials that, you know, it's absolutely necessary to. As you might have noticed, I'm outside right now. Why? Well, when you're testing aroma chemicals, you need really good ventilation. And what place is more ventilated than the great outdoors? So this is going to be happening outside. As I get into this, let me just preface this by saying that the way we perceive fragrances is going to be completely different from one person to the other. There's just no way around it. And there's so many different factors that play into it. Me being outside on a warm day, as I smell something, it's going to smell different when you're inside in an air-conditioned room. In addition to that, our noses aren't going to smell the same every single time as well. As you smell things, your sense of smell can get a bit weaker as it gets overwhelmed with all of these molecules. I just want to take all of that into consideration as I'm smelling these things, because I'm going to be completely honest of what I smell. Hence, I've got, background information to supplement, the gaps in my own perception. Okay, we've got that out of the way. First up is going to be green tea ketone. This is it here. I'm going to be a bad boy and smell this neat because this is already in a 1% dilution. Bit of background for this. Apparently this molecule has been sought after for decades, and it's extraordinarily powerful, often found in green tea, but it also possesses a honeyed green bamboo and straw-like caramelized aroma. So I'm super duper curious as to how this is going to smell. Dip that in. I can already smell it. Okay, I think this is what I've been smelling in my room for the past 3-4 months. So yeah, when I smell this, I do get a green tea. That definitely comes to mind. But not just green tea. I think this is present in every tea. White tea, black tea. It just depends on, obviously the ratios. Because at the end of the day, it is the same thing. It's tea. On its own, it does smell quite synthetic. If I were to describe this, it'd be something like a top to mid note. Oh, you know what? No, it's a mid note. Because it's not astringent. It is powerful because this is already diluted to 1%. I think this is one of those things that when I'm smelling it up close, I'm already going kind of anosmic to it, to be honest. I'm not, it's getting hard to pick up already. I'm going to be really curious to try to work this into my own green tea formulas. There is a straw-like kind of thing to it as well. Now that I'm smelling it more, it's kind of dry, sweet. Next up is Matcha Aldehyde. I don't have any notes for this. It just says cis-4-heptanol, and I think that's the name of the chemical compound of this stuff. And this is already diluted, 1% in IPM. So, let me just give this a dip. Oh, whoa. This is crazy strong. I can already smell it. Let me just teeny tiny bit, because this stuff is already powerful, and this is 1%. Imagine this neat. I can literally smell it off the bottle, nowhere near my face. This has kind of a meatiness to it. It's kind of the meatiness of a chestnut. It's meaty in a nutty way. It's kind of woody. This is hard to explain. This is true to the name. It's something you'd really only pick up in a matcha versus a green tea or a jasmine tea, or they're both green teas, or an oolong. No, this is crazy. It kind of reminds me of when you open up an edamame. Next up, I've got Filbertone. This is 1% in TEC, and this is supposed to smell like hazelnuts, kind of Nutella. It's very strong and can contribute to an interesting acorn note to a fragrance. This, right off the bat, it's coming off as metallic, and I don't really get how that's hazelnutty, but you never know. When you got things in high concentration, they just smell completely different to how they smell, in nature. Are they sure? This smells like when someone's cutting metal and you've got the sparks flying off the metal. This smells like that. Oh, you know what? Wait, that's crazy. As my nose is kind of getting to know this, I do kind of get a nutty kind of thing. I'm gonna have to sit on this one. For now, it smells like metal shavings, which is probably the furthest thing from hazelnuts you can, So, we've got 2-acetyl pyrazine. This is supposed to be toasted rice popcorn nutty. This again is 1% in IPM. I don't really know what IPM is. I use DPG personally. So, oh yeah, this smells like rice. Oh yeah, this is good. This smells like white rice. It's kind of sweet, woody. I'm getting a toasted facet to it as well. It reminds me kind of genmaicha. I think that's the name for it, which is it's a Japanese green tea with toasted rice, and it also has this kind of corn tortilla kind of vibe to it. The notes say popcorn, but it's more like a tortilla kind of thing, like a raw, uncooked tortilla that's just out of the package. That's strange. To me, that smells more nutty, hazelnutty, than the Filbertone. I'm imagining I need to maybe dilute that further. Yeah, it's already 1%, so I don't know. We're learning. Next up, we have 2-ethyl 4-methyl thiazole at a 0.1%. This is also known as pistachio thiazole. And this compound is found in a variety of foods, including raspberries, cooked meats, coffee, and toasted sesame seeds. It says this can be used to add a nutty coffee, tea, or chocolate aroma. However, it should be used with caution as this can be a bit overpowering. This has a distinct savory note, which I think is going to be perfect for matcha, because matcha is actually quite savory if you taste it. Certain types of matcha anyway. It says this should last about 4 to 5 hours on a smelling strip, gradually becoming more green. Let's give her a little dip, shall we? 0.1%. Think about that. Think about how little of this is in here. Okay. If you've ever smelt pistachio from Damascenone, this has that kind of distinct, kind of chalky pistachio kind of vibe to it. What is this diluted in? IPM. So it's also diluted in IPM. Yeah, it is a bit savory. Again, kind of chestnutty, like that kind of vibe. Next up is Gamma-Heptalactone. It says this lactone is pure gluttony. Cream, hay, tonka, and coconut swirl together in a mesmerizing floral gourmand vortex. This is neat, by the way, so this, I gotta be careful with this. Hasn't been diluted yet. Oh, this is beautiful. This is great. This is really good. This is like sugary, oily, dried, desiccated coconut. There's a certain warmth to it that I guess maybe it's kind of tonka. I haven't smelt tonka. I haven't smelt a lot of things. This is why I'm doing this. But I know it's tonka's got a warmth to it, and this has that. This is really nice. This is like, wow. I like this. If you've ever had a chocolate and coconut ruffle, I think that's what they're called. This is it's got that really gourmand nature to it. It's great. Gamma-Heptalactone. Love that stuff. That's good. Next up, caramel pentadione. It says here, homofuranol is commonly used in perfumery to create caramel notes. Homofuranol adds burnt sugar aspects, while caramel pentadione moves the caramel note from mobile gooey caramel to brittle sugary shards. That is one hell of a description. This is 1% in ETOH. I need to look into that. Caption, what is that? What is ETOH? Oh, I can already smell it. This is great. This is good. This is like when you put maple syrup on something, like on hot pancakes, and that maple, that sweet, like sticky maple syrup smell just kind of rises off, and you just get a whiff of it. This is really exciting. I can't wait to try to use this. I don't know if it's going to work for my matcha thing, because I don't know if I want my fragrance to smell this caramelly, but this smells like the syrupy caramel. I don't know what they're talking about, but about brittle sugary shards. To me, this is like a syrup. It's like the syrup on top of the puddings with the caramel on top. This is that. When you smell it up close, it's kind of smoky as well, which is kind of crazy. I like that. Caramel pentadione. Next up, Isobutavan. This is described as creamy, white chocolate, and vanilla. And this is neat. That caramel, the caramel pentad, it's lingering. That's some crazy stuff. Another really realistic gourmand note. It reminds me of the Lindt white chocolate truffle kind of things, the balls with the ganache inside. Super nice. This is more white chocolate than vanilla for sure, and it smells good. Isobutavan, beautiful white chocolate note. Next up, Benzaldehyde. This is an unrestricted almond note, so you could apply this to your skin, I guess. Oh, whoa. It's a bit sour, this one, but we gotta let it dry on the strip first. Yeah, so I'm getting this bitter almond. When you smell it up close, it reminds me of smelling a permanent marker, a Sharpie or something. And then when it's wet, it does have like a sour kind of thing to it. I don't know. This is, yeah, it's dry, it's bitter. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about these almond notes, because to me, a lot of these almond notes don't really smell like almond. I don't know what it is. It smells like when they use almond in like those desserts. When I have almonds, this kind of smell never comes to mind personally. But this is still very useful for me, because, you know, I'm getting a better understanding of what things smell like when people refer to them. So when people say almond note, well, this is what I will imagine. It smells like textures, to be completely honest. But that's neat. I need to dilute that. Leather carbonate. This is described as saffron, fizzy leather, metal, suede, rose. It says it's not been sold before. One of the reasons why I paid the premium to get materials off Harrison Joseph. This is also neat. Just gonna go in. So this is a leather note, and I have been loving leather fragrances recently. I've been really loving Ombre Leather recently by Tom Ford, as well as Oud Maracuja. There's a ton of fragrances that I've really been loving that have feature leather. This is really good. This reminds me kind of Ombre Leather, but less smoky. It's got this really nice dryness to it. I like this stuff. This is good stuff. Yeah, I kind of get the fizziness. Yes, and there's a slight like floral aspect to this. Really love this stuff. Leather carbonate. Next up is Theaspirane. Neat. This is described as piercing unripe cassis, mango, tea, osmanthus, tobacco. That's an interesting grouping of things. Cassis, mango, tea, osmanthus, tobacco. This is also neat. Let's give it a go. Mango, tea, osmanthus, like what do those have in common? Tobacco? Sure, tobacco is a very complex smell. There's lots of things that go into the smell of tobacco. Osmanthus, tea, mango. The mango part excites me. Oh, yeah. This is like that. When you smell a mango and it's got this kind of citric, aromatic, kind of green smell to it. This also smells a bit sweet as well. Now, I've never smelled osmanthus or cassis, so I don't exactly know how those come into play with this. I've actually got a green tea absolute, and it smells a little bit like this as well. So I see where the tea is coming in, because a green tea absolute, if you've ever smelt shampoos with green tea, it's kind of like a cooling, almost minty kind of thing to it. This has that a little bit. This kind of has that. Theaspirane. Cool stuff. Next up, Decalepis Absolute. One thing about fragrance is some of your raw materials are going to come in a hard to work with form. This has come in as a paste. So this I actually need to dilute. Otherwise, I'm not getting this on a test strip. For now though, I think I might just smell it off the bottle. It is an absolute, so this is a natural material, which I'm really drawn to, because I think natural materials have a lot more depth to them because there's less stripped out of them. So this is described as unmistakably vanilla, but also definitely not vanilla absolute. Rather than come up with a proper description, I'll put some interesting descriptions given to me by those who've sampled it, courtesy of the Harrison Joseph website. Like a cupcake tree. Gosh, it reminds me of ultra vanille and creosol, but thicker and more natural. I've got no idea what those are. To me, it smells like a vanilla bourbon tincture had a baby with a vetiver essential oil. Interesting. Let me try to describe it. So yeah, this has vanilla, definitely. It's like a vanilla base. This is quite layered. Again, there's kind of a spiciness to this. It's sweet. It is sweet. I don't quite know where the vetiver comes in with this. This is interesting. There's a bit of a warm spice to this as well. Kind of along the vein of like, not a cinnamon, a cardamom kind of vibe, but not really. I can't really put my finger on this. Yeah, this is really strange. This is a bit out of my, I don't have the vocabulary to describe this. Yeah, this is fascinating. Next up we've got Damascenone, pure Damascenone. This is something I'm super excited to smell. Damascenone is described as the most powerful and lovely rose ketone available, and you get more bang for your buck in terms of IFRA. So since it's pure, you end up using more of the ketone, the Damascenone, than if you use a less refined version, right? Given the same volume, a purer version, you're going to be able to use more of the actual fragrance molecule. That's what they mean by that. I've been really loving rose fragrances lately as well. I absolutely adore Rose Tenere, previously known as Une Rose, from the house of Frederic Malle. That is such a good rose fragrance. It's my favorite so far. And I've been hunting for a similar kind of fragrance, but nothing has really come close. Something tells me this absolutely needs to be diluted before I can properly smell this. This is my botched way of doing that. All right, give that a minute to dissolve. It's so weird. It doesn't make sense. This is like, I don't know how to explain this. It's kind of like the juicy part of the rose. I got to come back to this. Sorry. Okay, smelling Damascenone again on something more diluted. It smells quite fresh and green, kind of watery. Obviously floral with touches of fruitiness as well. However, smelling it on the bottle, it's more jammy and sweet and decadent, which is quite interesting because it's the same thing, just at a different concentration and a different medium. So yeah, that's Damascenone. Ambrettolide HC. I have been so keen to try Ambrettolide because ever since I smelt Oud from Maison Francis, I just loved the smoothness of Ambret. So this is described as a sensual, powerful and slightly fruity musk, similar to the musk found naturally in Ambret seeds. So unfortunately this isn't natural Ambret, this is Ambrettolide, which is a synthetic, I believe. So yeah, this is a musk. It's a nice, clean, white musk. Reminds me a lot of Galaxolide. See, musks are another one of those things that you just gotta dilute. Otherwise they get hard to smell. They're just heavy molecules, you know? I'm getting this slightly fruity nature to this, whereas Galaxolide doesn't have much of a fruitiness to it. This is a bit brighter than Galaxolide for sure. This is great. I like this stuff. I'm wanting to use this musk in my green tea fragrance because I think, to me, Ambret, it goes with green tea as a musk. All right. Next up, Nutty Pyrazine. As with all pyrazines, this is used in tiny traces. This is Nutty Pyrazine at 0.1% in IPM. This has a powerful, sweet, nutty, roasted, toasted, earthy, grainy, coffee and popcorn odor with savory nuances. Even at this dilution, this is a very powerful and diffusive material that is present in the natural aroma of coffee as well as a range of nuts. Often used in the flavoring industry to enhance the scent of popcorn. Its fragrance is most common as part of a chocolate or other gourmand aromas, but can also be used as part of a nutty or smoky accord. Awesome. Dog's going crazy. Oh, I can already smell it again. This reminds me of acetylpyridine already, just off of this. This is kind of almost identical to acetylpyridine, but this is kind of a bit more coconutty. I need to compare this with acetylpyridine and pistachio thiazole because they smell kind of similar, to be completely honest. It's disappeared on me. Okay, no, they're quite similar. They are quite similar. Weird. That is weird. I don't know what's going on with that. I'm afraid I might have bought the same kind of materials, which isn't exactly something I'd want. Again, it's got a kind of sharpy thing to it when you smell it right up close. I can definitely smell this being used in a chocolate or a coffee fragrance for sure. Oh gosh. All right, I've got Rice Absolute. So this is made from the bran of brown rice in the process of milling. It's got a brown paste kind of consistency, and the smell is supposedly quite surprising, with oaty cereal aspects as well as a distinct papery sweetness. This is another thing I need to dilute, but I'm just gonna smell it off the bottle. First thing that comes to mind is paper. It's a sweet paper. It's that sweetness that you get from paper, and I can definitely get the oatness to it and the cereal bit to it. Up close though, when you really sniff this, it's got a really slight garlicky onioniness to it. that reminds me of a man's BO. I don't know. That's Rice Absolute. Fascinating. And it's crazy how it's made from the bran of brown rice. Next up, Popcorn Absolute. This is diluted 40% in ETOH. This is described as the smell of the corn husks in popcorn and the almost woody back note, which is missing from most artificial accords. This absolute is actually quite tricky to make. The yield is very low and full of fatty acids, which must be removed. The final extract is sold at 40% in ethanol, which is sufficient to keep cloudiness at bay. And I've only got a little bit of this. I've only got 1 milliliter. This smells more nutty to me and more hazelnutty to me than the Filbertone. This has a sweetness to it. I could definitely see this used in like a chocolate kind of gourmand thing, as well as like a baked good. This gives me kind of like cupcake vibes. This would pair really well with cinnamon for sure. It kind of smells like cinnamon, to be completely honest. I've got ants on me. We've got a Seaweed Absolute. Sorry, this is far less animalic than the Fucus vesiculosus species. This Absolute is the closest thing to a pure salt note in Perfumery. So this is according to Harrison Joseph, not me. We'll see about that. Interestingly, it also has facets of oak moss, so it can be used to extend, twist, or even partially replace it. Oak moss is another raw material that I've been absolutely dying to try, and I've got it. But before we get to that, this is Seaweed Absolute Laminaria. This is an absolute, it's a paste. I'm just going to whiff it off the bottle. Yeah, there's a saltiness to this. I don't know about pure. You know, salt doesn't actually have a smell really, right? But it does smell salty. This would be really good in gourmand creation where you want to add a little bit of salt to it. Again, there's a dampness to this that I don't know if that's oak moss. Like that's kind of an oak moss smell. I don't know. Cafe Santos. This is from Firmenich, one of the big fragrance schools and raw material makers. This is described as strong espresso, dark roastiness, and it's got better solubility than most CO2 extracts. According to Harrison Joseph, arguably the best and most realistic coffee material out there by a long shot. This is neat, but the consistency is quite liquidy, so I think I can get this on a strip. Look at the color on that. That looks like coffee already. Whoa. Whoa, that's coffee. If I didn't know any better, I would have thought I'd dipped this into an espresso. It's missing a bit of the brightness that a real coffee has, but that's the case for pretty much every single coffee fragrance thing that I've smelt ever. They're always missing the bright acidity of the coffee. This actually retains some of that, which is why I'm shocked. This literally smells like coffee. This is a crazy raw material. Cafe Santos from Firmenich. All right, I was alluding to this earlier. Finally, we get to smell Oakmoss Absolute. Considering the technical difficulties of almost entirely removing small amounts of super potent allergens from a natural absolute, these guys deserve a pat on the back. By these guys, I don't know who that is referring to. It's referring to whoever made this. So this is supposed to be true oak moss because it's a natural. It's an absolute, and therefore it is a paste. So I'm not going to be able to get this on a strip. I could try. No, we'll try. One of the very first fragrances that I smelt, which I knew had oak moss in it, was Baccarat Rouge 540. And I'd always wondered, what does oak moss smell like? Because I never really understood what the heck Baccarat Rouge smelled like. And that's why that fragrance is so fascinating to me and many other people. That's why I think it's his bestseller. I think I'm going to get my answer here because I can kind of smell parts of Baccarat Rouge in this.
Several months later.
Do you know what that is? That's the diluted Oakmoss Absolute. And this thing has been sitting in my room for probably 3 or 4 months. So you do the maths and calculate how long it's been since I've last recorded a video. But that's besides the point. So, what does this actually smell like? Well, first of all, it's really earthy and slightly metallic. It has a certain quality to it that the more you smell it, the more anosmic you kind of become to it. To me, it reminds me of Baccarat Rouge because that's the fragrance that I predominantly associate with the smell. I'm going to drop some more on this. Now this is diluted to 10% in DPG, and you might be able to see the color on this. Now, when you first smell it, while it's still wet, it's got that tremendous menthol to it. It almost clears your sinuses by how spicy it is. But obviously once it dries down, it becomes more earthy, kind of metallic as well. I'd be really curious to see how this blends with other materials. And I'm wondering if this would work in my matcha fragrance. We'll see. If you made it this far through the video, thank you so much. Even if you just skipped through, you know. I understand it's a really long video, and I can't blame you if you did. I really hope you got some sort of value out of this, and I hope you visit back to this channel sometime in the near future. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again.